back to another episode of Code Red. I'm Ray Carr, and with me always is Fitz. Jim, how are you?
I'm fine, Ray. How are you?
Great, Jim. Jim, we have a special guest today with an incredible story. Sarah has a unique background in the fact that she's a survivor of childhood abuse and sex trafficking. She has a story that some may find disturbing, but also very empowering. Her story is a journey from abuse to incarceration for killing her abuser to finally gaining her liberation. So, in starting this, I just want to say, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you. I'm
Ditto here,
glad.
of course, Sarah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think probably for the best way for us to get started with this, Sarah, is for you just to have the floor and just tell us about your upbringing. And don't just you're just having a conversation with me and Jim. Nobody else is here. From the time you were a teenager to the time of your incarceration and on from there.
So I'm gonna go back to when I was living in Monrovia because that's when the onset of abuse was happening. That I didn't really know that it was abuse because it was just the family dynamics. And my sister raised me most of the time. My mom was very much like either at work or she wasn't able to be available a lot of times. And when she was, it was, we just kind of blended with whatever. It was go with the flow. And I felt like I was an overall happy kid, you know. I had a lot of resilience to kind of like bounce back from things that were difficult. Um, we experienced in Monrovia, we experienced the Night Stalker coming to our house. He had harassed the neighbor and had caused some violence up the street. So he would come and stalk the alleyways. I was a kid, so I was under the age of 9, and I didn't have anything to really compare that kind of drama or violence to. It was just okay. The police came in, they looked at fingerprints. The violence at the house was constant. It was yeah, it was constant. I know that. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Just for a timestamp it's just so this we're talking about the mid 1980s,
Yes,
and Monrovia's in California, of course.
yes.
I forget what big city is that near. I forget.
Pasadena.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're living there, and of all experiences besides everything else we're going to hear about, the Night Stalker is encroaching in your particular neighborhood, and we all know that he was a killer, a rapist,
Yes.
and what have you. So you're living through that as a young girl. So
Yeah. Our family, it was my mom, my sister, and myself. And we lived in a duplex. And so we were in the back duplex, and in the front duplex was Juanita and her 3 girls. And so, he was able to track and see who was vulnerable and come through the alleys. So I would just hear the adults talking about it or the news, but I didn't like consciously stress over it.
Well,
Yeah.
you were talking, Sarah, about a lot of abuse and a lot of family dynamics and violence, not
Mhm.
just going on in the neighborhood because of the Night Stalker, but happening right within your own home. Can you expand a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the abuse, excuse me, I was the youngest in the house, and my sister was like 8.5 years older than me. And she was really frustrated, because she didn't really have much of her youth growing up. And so my mom would come down hard on both of us. And so something like as the trauma violence as like having my hair combed, um, stuff like that would escalate into some serious abuse, frustration. So either from my mom or from my sister. And so I would spend a lot of time outside. I wouldn't come in the house. I'd stay out until like 10 or 11 o'clock at night or hang out in the neighbor's backyard and make like sand pies or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I just kind of did what I did, and that was it. I'd go to school. I got good grades at school. School was right across the street, and I drew. It was difficult, but yeah.
And Sarah, to capture your whole family picture, if I read this correctly, your father, you only had a few times that you met with him,
Mm-hmm.
3 times from what I read, and he was basically in prison most of your early life. So
Yes.
you didn't really have too much of a father role, so to speak, at least not by him, correct?
Yes, and my mom had a lot of boyfriends, so it was whoever was over or in a relationship with her at the time. Um, a couple of them were young. One guy was wanted for murder back east, and I guess came to California with my mom. And he had hid when we had moved. My mom had found that he had hidden knives like in the couch, in the chair. I guess like he was planning something. I don't know, but my mom and him ended up breaking up, so nothing came of it, which is of course good. But I would hear the adults just kind of talk about everything, everything. I heard everything, and I was adultified a lot when I was a young person, you know. And I don't know what kind of abuse I endured because I don't have a memory of it when I, little. But I do know that I was very, like I had this one little outfit where I would take the buttons off and show my shoulder. I was over like sexualized, and I have some memories of certain things that happened. I feel subconsciously there's a lot more things that happen, in that home just because there wasn't a lot of oversight. And I was very curious about a lot of things, you know, and yeah.
So the abuse and any abuse that may have happened, we hear a lot about stranger danger, but statistically, it's more likely what happened with you, someone within the household, an older male family member, or in this case, boyfriends, SIGOTs, significant others of your mother. And if anything did happen, that's probably where it stemmed from, right?
Yes. And then there was a situation that I experienced with my sister. And then my sister had shared that our oldest brother had sexually abused her when she was younger. So there was a lot of sexual stuff going on amongst like cousins, um, my oldest brother, and my mom's youngest sister. There was a time I remember I went to my grandma's house and my cousin, did something. I was like, no, what are you doing? It was just really, then we didn't sit down and talk about it. It was just don't do that or knock it off or go play or, that kind of stuff. So again, I didn't have anything to compare it to. So everything that I experienced, I normalized it.
That's one way to deal with it.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
it seem as though it's normal. Sure, sure. So
Yeah.
the the uh, the individual that you ran into when you were around 11 years of age, and I'm not going to mention his name unless you want to. I don't see the need in mentioning his name.
I
Uh,
think his initials are Gigi, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Maybe just for a reference point, go by that.
that's fine. So, how did you come about meeting this person, Gigi?
I was on my way coming home from school, and his car pulled up behind me, and he basically just talked to me and made me feel safe enough to get in his car to go get some ice cream. And my home was catty corner, so I could see my house, and I got in the car to go get ice cream.
You were about 11
Yes,
and he was about 20.
he was 33.
Oh, I missed that one. So 20 years older. Okay, geez.
So, you got ice cream. Did anything else happen at that point? If you want to talk about that.
He took me to Thrifty's. I got ice cream. He went to a park. I sat on a park bench and watched him play basketball for a little bit. And then he took me to his house. One of the houses I later found out was his. And he made the area real, comfortable and cozy. And then he went into a room, he changed. He came back out and he told me, like, stand up. And I did. I was very compliant. And he went to, like, sexualize my body. Like, he was touching my energy, like, around me, but not really touching my body. And I just stood there. And he just kept, like, seducing me and things like that. And then he took my little jumper off and my underwear, and then he molested me. And he really enjoyed it. And I just was like, okay, you know. And then he took me home after I got dressed, and he took me home and he dropped me off at my mom's house, and he gave me a card. And on the back of the card, it was a limousine service, and there was like 5 different numbers. And he said, if you need anything, or, just want anything, or just need to talk, I'm here for you. And it felt like he cared. So, I just was like, okay. And I went into the house, and that was it. I went into my room, and that was it.
Was there further contact with this guy, Gigi?
What was that?
Was there further contact
Oh,
that you had with this guy, Gigi?
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
who initiated the contact?
It was back and forth. It was back and forth. So I haven't sent you guys the pictures or anything, but I have them to show that where him and another guy had came, and they basically built this house up down the street. And if you look outside of his yard, you can see my house directly. So it was like a T, right? So, and it was more like organized crime in the community, because one of his limousine drivers was my neighbor across the street. And so he would come over and visit with my mom, but he also worked for Gigi. So it was organized, because it was like certain people went out to get certain girls, or even like gang rape the girls, And some of this it is like, it's not like I got hard facts, but if you look at the people who did what, who was closest to who, and you know what I mean, that kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that was also things that I experienced. And part of the breaking me in period, I believe, was when I was gang raped in the middle of the day, and I was 13. But that whole neighborhood, it was gangs, it was drugs, and it was very violent, Rubidoux. And it hasn't even changed much. Like, that same culture that it still goes on there, So
Sarah, did Gigi know about you beforehand? I mean, here is you as an 11-year-old. You don't have a father figure in the house. And here comes this guy who arguably could be of father age to you, especially when you reminded me he was 33, 20 years older than you. Do you think maybe he knew even a little bit in advance, hey, here's an 11-year-old. I can, groom her for a few years and then start putting her to work. And we know where this is going with the human trafficking. But do you think it was a chance encounter? He pulled up behind you that day? Or do you think he knew this was a little girl who didn't have any, father who's going to come out and try to kick my butt for finding out what I'm going to wind up doing her? Any idea about that?
it feels like, as an adult now, looking back at how it is, to me, yes, I truly believe like he was smart enough and sophisticated enough to know how I came home, knew, my mother. We had been living there since 1987, So I was 9 when I moved there. So there was this 2 year period where people talk or people get to know each other. I just didn't know that I didn't know what a traffic was.
Sure. A lot of people today don't, and we're slowly getting the word out what's happening. But one more question about this first encounter. When he dropped you off or was driving you home, did he swear you to secrecy? This is our little secret between us. Don't tell anybody. I mean, promising you more things in the future. Because obviously, if you told someone and the police found out, he's under arrest right then and there. Was there any kind of a bond that was established then in that regard?
It was so I felt like he felt so confident in what he was accomplishing with me that he didn't feel nervous or worried. Like
Interesting.
he wasn't threatened by anything. And this is what was, any child that goes through this, when my body had reacted to him touching me, the way he responded, like, oh, I can make so much money off of this. And in my head, I didn't process that, right? Like I was just like, I was stuck, and it, I just kind of went inside myself at that point. But I didn't, I think that because I was living in such survival mode in my home anyway, I lived in the moment. Like I'm safe in the moment, but I didn't have anything to break down that this wasn't safe.
Sarah,
Hmm.
in that first encounter, did he actually say that? I can make
Mhm.
money. We can make money with this, or did he actually?
Yes, because because the way my body, it was. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it's like you can tell the perversion from his lived experiences, right? It's like that pedophile, like,
Pedophilia.
oh,
Yep.
this is good, like, and it's really disgusting that a grown man would have that kind of emotion.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, to the point where I truly believe that people who have the resources um, have worked with people like him to handpick and find kids.
Hmm. Yeah, great.
Hmm.
Well, how does this progress? In other words, you don't have to get into details with this, but how did this
Yeah.
progress? Did it progress with you having additional encounters? Now, you mentioned a gang rape at 13 with individuals from the neighborhood, but how did it progress with him? Did he engage you with other things? Did he? How did it go?
It was like he started to, for my friends, oh, you guys want to go to something or go over here and do this, or my school. And he would come and want to have quiet time with me alone, or uh, take me to a motel. It was the grooming process to break me in. And the first time that he took me to the hotel, it was the same hotel that he lost his life in. And he that hotel was a hotel that he visited a lot. And so the records, they didn't have the records to show how many times he had been there. That information wasn't brought out at my trial. They said that the cameras weren't working that night. Um, just a lot of interesting things.
Convenient. Yeah, very
Very
convenient.
convenient. And like I told you, I have the tapes. And one of the detectives, you know, and I want somebody else that's got a good ear that can kind of hear how the conversations were going with the detective when he was interviewing like Big Mama, who was one of Gigi's high end women that just kind of took care of stuff for him. So the conversation with the detective on the tape is, she's like, "Oh well, you'll hear it. I'll send it over to you guys." But like,
Okay.
It goes into detail. They have phone records that for 2 months after the crime happened, that phone was still being called in the car phone. But the judge didn't want any of the, like somebody blocked them from bringing the evidence for the phone numbers to the phone.
Hey, Cold Red fans, Fitz here. Are you interested in a career in criminal justice? You've heard me talk about numerous cases I've worked over the years involving the scientific analysis of language known as forensic linguistics. Well, Pennsylvania Western University now has a fully accredited MA program, which I actually co-developed, where I teach forensic linguistics along with various other excellent professors too. This is the only forensic linguistic graduate program in the world which is both online and asynchronous. That means the courses are 100% on your schedule. We have professor video recordings, academic readings, and real-life case exercises posted weekly, and you can access any time to review and then complete the week's assignment. If you're interested in learning how written and spoken language can help solve crimes and get a master's degree at the same time, check out the Pennsylvania Western University's Forensic Linguistics program at www.pennwest.edu/justice.
Here's a question I have for you. People aren't blind. People aren't blind. People in the neighborhood, they know what's going on in the neighborhood, especially in those close, tight-knit neighborhoods. How did people around you not see this happening? And did they see it happening?
The neighborhood itself is dirty. It's not the kind of neighborhood that it's not really a safe neighborhood. It's just not. They just knew who he was, and that's it. And I think that some people, I don't know what level of influence that he had, but it wasn't just on the neighborhood. And if he had the police on the payroll, not only just in Riverside, but Orange County and Los Angeles, it just started to kind of look a little Epsteinish, in comparison to who was being trafficked, who the clients were, the buyers were, things like that. And the amount of money that he had showed me one time in a safe where it was hundreds, and it had the little white paper around it and all jewelry and just all these things. And he was like, this is you. This is what, you deserve. You're beautiful. Life is this. And he would tell me that it didn't matter. If you're in a relationship with a boyfriend or a fiance or husband, it's still sex. It's still like selling your body, because they're going to buy you flowers. They're going to take you out to eat. And so he would compare the morals to, equivalent it to money being bought. Like no matter what, if you're in a marriage, you're still being bought.
Usually when you see a stack of $100 bills with a strap around it, what you call a white strap, that's usually in sums of 10,000. Am I right with that, Jim? Usually in sums of what I know.
A round number, 5 to 10, something like that. Yeah.
Like $10,000 at a pop. It's $100 bills, which is.
He had a lot of them.
And there's quite a few of those in there.
Yeah. He had a safe. I didn't know, but I guess there was like $1 million worth of something also in another safe in the house. And the cars, and you got to look at it, that was the mid 90s. So that kind of money equivalents to, now you think about it, it was a higher situation.
Did you ever, before, I know Jim has something he wants to say, did you ever get any information about who some of the clients may have been? Because I always wonder, after your arrest, if that didn't play a part based upon the clientele. Did you have a feel for that at all, Sarah?
I think now, looking back, because especially some of the things that I've experienced since the book came out. Some of the information that has been shared, through investigative journalists. The fact, like, one time when Gigi took me to a place, it was a very high end home. And he said, "You just wait in the car." And then the gates opened up for him, right? So he walked through, and I couldn't see because it was night, but I couldn't see who he was talking to. But there was, exchange. And then when Gigi got back in the car, he just had this sense of like, yes, he was excited about whatever was going to maybe happen next. I do feel like there might have been some politicians or judges or, police for sure, because like I said, he had too much of confidence. Um, yeah. And he always, yeah.
I'm picking up that vibe here. Just picking up that vibe. I mean, I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if I'm wrong, but I just think there's a lot more to this than even you knew. Sarah.
So I think that whoever he serviced, they definitely want to protect him, just the way that I was treated during my trial. How I was harassed by the police department when they had me in the county jail. The fact that he had priors in San Francisco in the 80s for pimping and pandering, things like that, but they never brought that evidence into the courtroom. And the judge also said that his profession didn't have anything to do with what happened that night. And
Really?
when my lawyers came in, Perkins Coie, when they came in to investigate and get the records and stuff, they referred to Riverside as a serious elk club, and I didn't know what that meant, but I do now. And that they didn't want to give up any information really about my case. They kept kind of playing with them. And when Arnold Schwarzenegger commuted my life without parole to 25 to life, he did it also with Nunez, and Nunez was a politician, right? His son Nunez was in prison, and Arnold made an executive decision on my case and Nunez's case, and then our records were sealed for 30 years, and I don't know why, which was odd because one of my attorneys was like, "It's odd,"
Yeah.
Sarah, we're getting a little bit ahead here, and I have a feeling our audience will want to get some more information. And you mentioned your book, by the way, and I want to just mention early on here, I Cried to Dream Again. I like the title, and I think it's a compelling title, and it'll certainly make people want to read it and find out more about your story. I guess you wrote it with Corey Thomas as the co-author there. So we want to hear more about that. But I'm a behavioralist, a profiler, and I just want to ask you some questions about those early days. Nothing graphic. I don't want to hear anything graphic or specific, but you're now 13. He's clearly having a sexual relationship with you. This guy who is in his, I guess, mid 30s at this point. Is there at some point, is he like a boyfriend to you? Is he taking care of you? The first time at some point he asked you to service one or more other adult males. Did that offend you? Was it like he was asking you to cheat on him? I'm just wondering what the mindset is of a guy like this who is trying to convince these young women around the world, these girls around the world, how to get them to do what they want without running away. We've established he knew you didn't have a father at home, and your mother was busy doing her thing. You're in a neighborhood that, by your own admission, kind of had some crime problems to it, and people probably just wanted to survive in those neighborhoods. They weren't going to call the cops on everything they saw. So how does a guy like this take this to the next level with you? And I'm just wondering, what's he promising you? Is he actually giving you money at some point? And then the first time he says, "Hey, I got a buddy over here or five buddies. Can you take care of them?" How does that play on your mindset? Do you want to get out? Does you fight with him? What's your mindset?
So my mindset was my spirit, I think, no, my spirit was already broken. And the abuse that I had endured, like I was already self mutilating by the time I was like 9 and 10.
Hmm.
I had a lot of melancholy. Like I really knew well how to sit and just understand the depths of grief or loss. However, to the opposite of that, I was really like resilient, and I had this childlike approach of trust. It was kind of like, okay, if it has to be this way, then it just has to be this way. Okay, it is what it is, and I didn't have a lot of respect uh, for my body or my time. It didn't hold value to me, and I know that is because the different types of sexual abuse I had endured, like being raped and stuff. So I don't want to talk too much if my daughter comes up. So if I hold on one second. Okay.
Hmm.
We can edit this.
Sure.
Interesting story. Tough story to
Yeah, it really is, Jim.
hear and listen to. And
Yeah, that's why I say it'd be kind of disturbing, but it's so empowering. I mean, look at her now; she's amazing.
yeah.
Is everything
Yeah,
good?
she's good. I just got to go check in on her in about 10
How old
minutes.
is she? How old is she, Sarah?
She's 9.
9. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you were in a difficult neighborhood, a high crime area, and people there just wanted to survive.
Mhm.
And what they saw the little girl doing across the street, that wasn't, so much for them to have to react to necessarily, but you had to survive. And you had to do what you did with this guy, including him bringing other people into the mix. And that must have been difficult the first time that happened.
I think, yeah, of course it's difficult. My life was already difficult. So this experience to me, it just solidified my low sense of being. It fed into the over sexualization of children. My worth began to be defined by, very codependent. It was very codependent. It was very like my identity was like my identity was a reflection of how people perceived me at that moment. So rather my mom, if she was pleased, it was good. If um, my teachers were pleased, with my academics, then that's good. That's a gold star. If I'm a participant in sexual acts with others, good job, Sarah. And so those were the situations that just began to shape my adolescence. And it didn't help the type of sexual experiences that I was having in the neighborhood. And this is very common in a culture where there's gang violence and drugs or, low vibe living. There is this social acceptance, this socially constructed acceptance of like, you can sleep with the homies or sleep with whoever you want. Moms were sleeping with their kids. Uncles were having babies with their. I mean, it's a neighborhood where anything pretty much goes. And again, like it blocked off my sense of feeling like life was good, life was safe, life was not poverty stricken. A lot of the buyers, it's like they go into the dirtiest parts and they want to do the dirtiest things, or they want to be real just icky. And to me, that's in an alignment of the different types of spiritual abuses that happen, because people who usually harm children, their lifestyles are not, they're not good, and usually don't find them in a church where they genuinely want to be in the church, praising God. They're there because they're looking, right, to feed that dark side of them. And for me, like when I already seen the dark side within my home with my mom, I've seen it with, you know, racism in my family, and felt it. The fact that my mom is French German and my dad's American, African, and Native. There was this draw from like it didn't matter the race that wanted to sleep with with me or paid. It was that taboo, you know, and like you think the devil comes looking really bad and dirty, and he doesn't. He comes looking very nice and posh and pulled together, and
Yeah.
like, and then you see the other side of him, you know, and
Sarah, Sarah,
yeah,
it seems like you were almost numb. You became conditioned from early on that this is the way life was. You didn't know any other life but what you were exposed to. But then things came to a boiling point. Can you tell us how it came to where you had to you made a decision, or you had to make a decision that was just going to change your life and take it in a direction you never thought it would?
never, never. Like I know that the like when I didn't feel like I needed to kill him, you know. Like I think I don't know if it was Stockholm syndrome, that I loved anyone who harmed me. I learned that from my mom very well. To this day, she can say something to me and I cringe, like I can feel myself being that little girl, like, please, mom, I know, I'm sorry, I'll fix it. You know. So I feel like the situation that I got put in, that I was set up to take him out. And the compliance that I had and the codependency that I had, I was like more than a willing vessel in a sense. And the level, everything that happened that night didn't make sense, but it did make sense. It was like such cognitive dissonance. And that night in the hotel room, I didn't want to sleep with him, you know. Um, I didn't I didn't even want to kill him. Like it was just so much stuff that was going on. And when I did, it happened so fast for me. Like I just jumped up and like did it. And when he fell back, I remember like I started to cry, and I told him I'm so sorry. Like I'm so sorry, you know? And I think that some people feel like, oh, you deserve a medal, in a sense, because I stopped so many other people from being abused and victimized. I was able to stop the abuse within myself happening, you know. But I also feel like I still have no right to take anybody's life. And that never goes away, you know. And I feel like at times I try my best to make it make sense. I want to check off all the boxes for all the harm that was done. That he took my life, and he took my innocence. That he gave my mom money. I don't know what kind of agreement they had, but seeing that being witnessed, it was a combination of everybody that harmed me represented that night. And I feel that being accountable 100%. I will always be accountable. And I feel like moving forward, when we have conversations about real solutions on identifying for survivors, um, that it needs to be individualized. The needs to heal. There's, you don't. There's a lot there. There's so much there when especially a kid takes a life of somebody that hurt them, but also showed them another side of like distorted love that only mirrored the distorted love that came in, and that you grow up in homes that are dysfunctional. So the cognitive dissonance that gets penetrated in the subconscious, especially in kids, is terrifying. It's terrifying because the brain opens up right at a certain age, to age 5, 6, maybe 7. Then you have arrested development, but that subconsciousness is like absorbing everything. Then it closes and then it opens again. So the kids that are abused, between 11 and the development of the brain where it absorbs everything, it goes in the subconscious. And those are memories that no matter what you do, you're never going to forget. Your body's going to always remember. And you got to work extra hard to get that out, but it requires so much, that the cortisol, the adrenaline fatigue, it's just a lot. And I feel like now that we're having these conversations, I'm not comfortable with just generalizing the experience, because it's important to really create spaces where kids feel safe in the community. And it's important to make sure that buyers and traffickers do not have such easy access to vulnerable kids.
Sarah,
Before you
I
go,
was,
Jim, you're gonna stop here.
yeah, I think this is an ideal place to ask Sarah if you would come back for a part 2 of this.
Well, before you do that, can I ask one more question, Jim?
That's what editing's for. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know, and I'm sure Matt will take care of it. Sarah, while all this is going on, from the time you're 11 all the way to the time when you make the decision to end it, did he ever ask you to engage in any other crimes besides the prostitution aspect of things? Did he ever ask you to do anything else?
Well, the child sex trafficking, that's a complete crime, right?
Right,
Alone.
right.
He wanted me to have a fake ID, to make it be. He was in the process of having me want to be older, right? Be older than I was. So it was escalating. Whoever the folks were in Vegas, whoever the folks were, in different parts of the United States, his organizational ring was not just in California. Um, but
Did
like
they have
not
you
going to
travel?
school. I mean, it's not like a crime not to go to school, really.
No.
But
Did he engage you to travel? Did he have you travel, or was it just in the LA area?
no, it was just in California. Yeah, Orange County, LA. Yeah.
Sarah, your story is an amazing one, and I know our audience wants to hear more because there's so much more. You're such an intelligent, well-spoken person, especially having what you've been through. Would you consider coming back for a part 2 of this interview?
No, absolutely.
Okay. Ray, are you willing to come back and we'll talk to Sarah again on this?
Absolutely, Jim.
All
I'd
right.
love to hear the end of this.
Folks, we're going to end this particular episode of Cold Red with Sara Kruzan, but we're going to come back. So tune into the next one. And in the meantime, check out our coldredpodcast.com, all our social media sites. subscribe if you don't mind. And we're going to see you next time and finish up Sarah's amazing story and talk even more about what she's doing today to do everything that she can to prevent human trafficking, child sex trafficking, what have you, including some legislation out there that's pending, I know, in the House of Representatives. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Ray, thank you. Sarah, thank you. And see you both very shortly in the next episode.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.